All right. I think I'm unmuted now. Everyone can hear me. Welcome everyone for joining us for our Maine chapter's Intro to Backpacking workshop. My name is Frank Brooks. I am a volunteer leader for the Maine chapter of the AMC. And tonight, Denise Fredette, who is the outings chair for the Maine chapter, is going to be giving the bulk of the presentation here on introduction to backpacking. And then we will answer any questions you might have. I believe, if I understand correctly, all the attendees cannot speak to us. I believe they're all muted. But there is a question and answer widget that should be down in the bottom of the interface. If you have any questions during the presentation, please put them in the Q&A widget. And we will either answer them as we go along, or we'll probably come around and answer a bunch of questions at the end. So without further ado, I think I will turn this over to Denise Fredette to start the presentation.
Okay, just bear with me here. Okay. Okay, hopefully if everybody can see me all right. My screen looks a little different than it did before. And if you can't see me or hear me, just put something in the Q&A and let me know and I can adjust that. My name is Denise Fredette. I have been an AMC trip leader since 2013. I lead mostly day hiking trips and backpacking trips. And I've done a lot of mountain leadership school, advanced mountain leadership school for backpacking. And I remember when I first started doing backpacking and, I didn't know what I didn't know. I Googled a lot of things and I learned as I went along, learned a lot. I brought way too much when I first started out that I learned that I didn't really need. So I'm gonna share my screen. Okay. So this is introduction to backpacking. This is for people who are already experienced day hikers who are just getting into backpacking. Not so much for like people who are interested in starting and going and doing long distance through hiking. We're not going to get that in depth. This is just to get you started, things that would be good to know. So this is basically the overview of what we're going to talk about. We're going to touch on some things in several times during this presentation. So we'll just start out with sort of a general explanation and then work our way down. So before you start backpacking, before you start your go on your backpacking trip, you need to prepare. So just getting in the habit of carrying more gear, because in a backpacking trip, you're going to be carrying all of your gear. And the common rule is that a loaded pack should weigh no more than 20% of your body weight. So if you weighed 150 pounds, they say you shouldn't be carrying any more than 30 pounds, for a few days backpack. And if you're backpacking in a group or with other people, one of the things we do to lighten our load is sharing group gear. For instance, one person can carry a stove, another person can carry the water filter. That way you're sort of distributing the weight, so you're not carrying all of that, because a lot of times it's pretty easy to share things like a water filter. And being prepared to cover a lot of miles and a lot of elevation Backpacking trips could take as little as 5 miles a day, or longer, more than 20 miles a day even. It's always better to start easy and work your way up, instead of, going for that, long 15 miles a day up steep inclines. Starting easy is really a good idea. And another way that you could prepare is to be physically fit, to exercise regularly. Hiking with weights is great. Putting, more weight in your pack, carrying more things to get used to the feeling, because it really is, it can throw your balance off. It's just a different feeling. So hiking with weight, strength training is really important. Core exercises and strengthening your glutes and your legs, things that you could do, like high intensity training and Tabata, lunges and dips. And this should be done, started at least a few months before you're actually going to go on your backpacking trip, and strengthen those muscles. And being able to brush up on skills like map and compass and wilderness first aid. And the Maine chapter offers both of those. Usually in the spring, we've had to make some adjustments this year, as many people know, but those are really important. They say, some of the things that you should carry is a map and a compass, but it doesn't do you any good if you don't know how to use them. And backcountry cooking, depending on how intricate you want to get, how far you want to go with that, having some backcountry cooking skills can be good. And risk management. Before you even leave home, do your homework. Check for trail closings and trail conditions, and alternate routes, so you'll have your map and you'll be able to identify if something goes wrong. Having bailout options so that you can get out of there quickly is important. So before you even go out, look at your map, see what your options are, and leave detailed plans with somebody who can start an emergency procedure if you get into trouble. So there's also the environmental assessment. There's weather. I check the weather, a week before a trip, a few days before a trip, right at even the morning of a trip, because especially in the mountains, weather changes so rapidly, and you want to know, is it going to be hot and sunny? Are you going to need to apply more sunscreen? Is it going to be raining? Is there a chance of thunderstorms? What's the wind going to be like, especially if you're out in the open above tree line? How is the water? Some places by midsummer, they might have water sources earlier in the summer, but they might dry up by the time, late summer comes around. So water availability. What kind of wildlife is around there? Bears are big in New England in the Northeast. So, how are you going to account for that, especially with like food storage? The sun and the moon. Is it going to be a full moon if you have to hike at night? Is the sun going to be out? That affects your trip. And sun protection, wearing a hat or a visor, or something for your scalp and your head, and sunscreen. Insects, we're coming into black fly season. So insects are a big thing to think about, and how you're going to protect yourself, and ticks as well. We wear bug nets when we hike, usually in May and June. So I would probably, if you were going to hike anywhere between May and July, I'd bring a bug head net and bug spray. Navigation, how easy is it to navigate the trail? Do you have good navigation skills? Do you know what blazes you're looking for, and how to, find the trail with cairns? And how remote is it? If you got into trouble, how soon would help be able to arrive, or how soon would you be able to get out? And would your cell phone even work? So that's a consideration. And of course, your trail conditions. And there are websites that you can go to check out your trail conditions. I'm going to show you that, just some Nope, that's still not working. Okay, I'm gonna show you a few things here. All right, we're gonna start with weather. So when you're researching your weather, I like weather.gov. So that's the National Weather Service. That's my preferred site. There are other sites, and if you hike regularly, you probably have a preferred site. So I go here, and just for instance, Mount Washington is pretty popular. There we go. Some places will give you that because Mount Washington has the weather observatory on top. This is pretty much where they are. Looks pretty snowy. So it's if you can get a point forecast for where you're going. Some other places might not be exact, but they'll be close if you typed in sort of the general area. And there's also a map that you can zoom in and zoom out and just sort of click on the area that you're going to be in to check out the weather. And I also like down here at the bottom of this forecast, there's something hourly weather forecast. And I like that because it tells you what the temperature is, what the gusts and surface wind speed are, and the precipitation potential. And it's all hourly. So you could see, is it going to clear up by the time you reach a certain point? There's also the higher summits forecast, and that's got there through the mountwashington.org website, and that's also a good reference for like if you were going to go and backpack in the White Mountains. And when you're researching trail conditions, there are a lot of sites where people actually post trip reports, and I reference this a lot, and you probably do if you're day hiking, but it's also another way to know if there are blowdowns blocking the path, or maybe somebody went and there wasn't water, the water source was unreliable. So these are good things to do that you could just, research. And sometimes like this time of the year, stream crossings are higher. So those are things to think about. Okay. So also emergency and medical preparation. Accidents can happen even with the most experienced hikers. And, I can think of a few just right off the top of my head. Help can be hours away, especially up here in the Maine mountains and the New Hampshire mountains. If you're going on an AMC trip, be upfront about medical conditions before a trip. It's really important for your safety, for the group safety. If there's something, like if you're allergic to bees, where's your EpiPen? If you have asthma, if you have a heart condition, anything that you think might be important and useful information about medical condition, share that. It's really important. And be prepared you can take first aid training, wilderness first aid training. And if you go on an AMC group hike, a lot of the leaders carry group first aid kits, but it's always good to carry your own personal first aid kit. And some of the most common injuries from hiking and backpacking are blisters and ankles and knee sprains, scrapes and blood, dehydration and exhaustion. This picture here was Advanced Mountain Leadership School some years back. And this was actually not the plan to go down the link. We had part of that school is we create basically a trip for 5 days, just this group of I think it was 8 people who most had never met each other. But we went down this trail because there actually was an emergency and somebody had to be evacuated. So we altered our plan. So we had to research, and make changes like that. So I got to discover this lovely trail. It was very squishy and there were a lot of ups and downs. So you can flush cuts and scrapes with treated water. And some of the things to include in your first aid kit are Band-Aids, moleskin, adhesive tape, gauze, bandanas, ace bandage, Neosporin, alcohol wipes, iodine, knife and scissors, and a SAM splint, which is optional. And a SAM splint sort of like this flexible, pliable thing. And I don't have a picture of it with me right now, but it's used for sort of immobilizing your arm, like if you broke your arm or different parts of your body, and you can cut it. It's just helpful if you need to sort of protect a body part and immobilize it. And I would also add duct tape to the list because that's just it's been proven to be a useful thing to have, even though you can't think of a use right away. It's pretty good to have on hand. So campsite selection. This is a picture of the Gio campsite over below the Bonds in the White Mountains. And as you can see, there's 3 tents here, and if need be, we probably could have fit another one somewhere. A small one. But site selection, research your options ahead of time. You can, do a Google search, ask, on Facebook groups. On the AMC, there's a place, if you do a search on their website on outdoors.org, it lists the AMC backcountry sites, and it tells you whether it's a tent pad or tent platforms, if there are lean-tos, outhouses, if there's a bear box, and about their water source. So you get some really useful information on there. And if you know that there's an organization that might have backcountry sites, you can go to their website and find out more information. Like Randolph Mountain Club also has a website and operates several backcountry campsites in the White Mountains. So if you can use existing campsites and shelters, it minimizes your impact on the environment, and don't disturb the environment. Try to leave it the way you found it, or better. If you have to choose your own site, what we call stealth camping, just realize that many areas prohibit stealth camping, and know the rules. For instance, and I say this because I probably backpack more in the White Mountains. For instance, you cannot camp within a quarter of a mile of an established campsite or lodge or hut in that area. And I believe it's at least 200 feet off the trail and 200 feet from a water source. So those are some things to keep in mind. Water. Purify all of your water, and if possible, use running water. And of course, be prepared for low water levels. One year we did the eastern half of the Grafton Loop, and there were about 6 backcountry campsites along that section of the loop. And the first campsite we came to, although it listed it had water, it said it would be unreliable, and it was unreliable. So luckily we knew that, and we brought enough water to get us through to till the next day, when we went a couple of miles and came across the next water source. So that's pretty important. Cooking, there's the no cook option, which is the easiest cleanup. Don't forget to hang your food in a bear bag or use a bear canister in bear country. And keep cooking, cleaning, and eating area at least 100 feet from sleeping area. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. So in the campsite, this is our beginner backpack last June. It was to Ethan Pond, which I absolutely love that campsite, and the caretaker was awesome. We even got to hear some stories from some thru hikers because it's right off the AT. And as you can see, so when you're in the established campsites, there's usually sort of like an eating area and a cooking area away from the tent platforms. And behind the lady in pink is a bear box, which is really nice to have because if there's a bear box there, chances are you don't have to hang your bag or have to carry a heavy bear box. And there's usually, especially like in this site, a place where you could sort of clean your dishes. It's like a bowl with a strainer on top, and you do need to take the scraps from the strainer, your food scraps, because otherwise it attracts animals and the caretaker doesn't want to take care of that. So, and this is just a nice area also just to meet other hikers. So cooking with as little cleanup is best. Pack out food scraps and dispose of your gray, dirty water away from any water sources. As far as pooping and human waste go, use outhouses if possible, and only put human waste and toilet paper in the outhouse. Don't throw anything else besides that in there. And if there is no outhouse, dig a hole. It should be, I believe, at least 6 inches deep and 2 inches wide. And when you're done your business, pack out what you can. Please pack out the toilet paper and cover it back up and try to disguise it somehow so that you're not leaving evidence behind. And as far as campfires, preferably don't have one, but if you must have one, only in approved campsites, and use the fire ring and only downed wood, not pulling, bark off a tree or limbs off a tree to minimize impact. So in most of New England, you can hang your food. Up here on the top corner was our bear hang when we were doing the Grafton Loop. It's a little bit close to that top limb there, but otherwise it was pretty good. I actually learned how to do a bear hang on a YouTube video years ago. There's easy ways to learn how to do it. Sometimes it takes a little bit of practice, but hanging your bear food. And below here, this is in the Adirondacks. This is my friend Marielle. And this is our bear boxes that we carried into this campsite. They're kind of like, I think I only probably could get a few days worth of food in them. They're really not that big and they're kind of bulky, but in some areas, especially out west, they're required. So store all of your smellables at least 10 feet off the ground and 100 yards from your sleeping area, and preferably at least 6 feet away from the next tree because, as we know, bears can climb. Keep food out of your tent. Bears are attracted by food smells. Do not sleep in your day clothes. So this is our Bermuda Triangle. And cook your food away from your sleeping area. Wash your face and hands after cooking. Clean your dishes away from sleeping area. Bears have an incredible sense of smell, and they will go sniffing around. They're almost conditioned to now with all the human food around and not take care of it as well as we can. There's also, other like rodents. So before I go to bed, I clean out all of the pockets, those waste pockets where you store your food. I also take care of those, and then I open the zippers because, in case rodents or mice come around and start to get hungry. So food and water. So when you're thinking of food, consider calories, preparation, how much fuel you're going to need and how much water you're going to need and what your tastes are. You don't want to bring something that you're going to be sick of that, just for sustenance. You want to really enjoy your food. Approximately 2 pounds per person per day, and get some food that's nutritious and that you'll want to eat. And I do this. I mostly bring food that cooks by adding boiling water or something that you just need to boil. If you want to get more into backcountry cooking, that is awesome. And there are books and YouTube videos. We won't get too much into that right now. Usually I'm pretty tired at the end of the day. So my method is anything where you just add hot water. Removing excess packaging and prepackaged foods to eliminate waste. Freeze-dried versus do-it-yourself. When I first started, I brought a lot of freeze-dried because I just didn't have the know-how to get different things. And I liked having a hot meal at the end of the day, but it gets expensive. It's, you know, $8 to $14 for a freeze-dried meal. So a lot of times I will bring couscous, which cooks up really, really fast. Just add water and massage it, you know, stir it a little bit. And then I add nuts and dried fruit and those tuna foil packets. I do that same thing with ramen, and just add ingredients. So I try to, there's a lot of things when you think about things that you might, you know, certain lentils cook up faster. So that's what I do. And I usually bring, I bring, you know, either a collapsible bowl or a freezer bag, like a hefty freezer bag, a quart size one, and I store my food in there, and then I just add hot water and I massage the bag, and it's ready within like a few minutes. So I like that. And don't forget your snacks for on the trail. Things that you like, maybe a little bit of protein. I like those little Debbie Nutty bars. They're one of my favorites. Hydrate before the hike, hydrate before you even start. Avoid dehydration, hypothermia, which is when from the cold, or hyperthermia illness. For normal activity, when it's not too hot, 2 liters a day is sort of the guideline. And for hot temperatures, 3.5 liters a day. Drink water early and often. And if you can, add electrolytes. And I carry either Noon tablets, NUUN, and put them in my water. I also, when I go backpacking, I carry these salt tablets. They actually taste like lemon, because I get cramps in my abdomen after backpacking, and that seems to calm it, and I drink the water. And there's a lot of hydration systems. There's Nalgene bottles, and there's, you know, the Camelback reservoir system that sits in your pack, you know, with the straw that you can just drink from. I usually use a combination of a 2-liter Camelback, and then I have a collapsible plastic bottle that I keep for when we're in camp. And water purification. So there's several different options for water treatment. And there's, I'm gonna just, all right. I'm just gonna show you a few different ones. There's a water filter purifier. So there's actually usually like a tube that comes out of the top and a tube that comes out of the bottle. This is a Katahdin Hiker, and then, you know, you just put the bottom tube with a filter in the water, and you put the other one in your bottle and just pump. There are iodine tablets, where some of them you put them in, wait 15 minutes, then you rinse the bottle threads or the hydration hose. I actually have these iodine tablets, and you put it in, you do that. And then I have a second tablet that you put in after that that gets rid of the nasty taste. Chlorine, 4 drops per liter, wait 30 minutes. You could boil your water to purify it. We usually do that in the winter. Not so much in the summer. At least 1 minute up to 5 minutes. Then there's the UV light, the SteriPen. This one destroys viruses and bacteria and protozoa, including Giardia and Cryptosporidiosis. I'm not very good with long words like that. And most of them are battery operated. They take like 4 AA batteries, and it looks kind of like that. And it takes, once the light goes off, there's easy instructions on it. It takes about 90 seconds per 1 liter of water. And then there's the squeeze water filter. A common one is the Sawyer. Okay. That is the Sawyer filter. So filter versus purifier. A filter gets rid of the protozoa and parasites and some bacteria, but it doesn't remove viruses. So the purifier, like the SteriPen, eliminates all of these plus viruses. It works on UV lights. So for gear and clothes, so it's basically the same as for hiking. I usually bring an extra shirt that I sleep in and then I hike out in on the last day. And I do bring some extra underwear because in the summer when it gets humid, kind of stinks to wear wet stuff when you're starting out. But eventually you're gonna, or when you're at camp, eventually you're just gonna get sweaty again anyway. So when I first started hiking, I brought way too many clothes, but you really don't need them. Just something dry to wear while you're in camp, and convertible pants are good. If it gets cold at night, and then you just zip them off during the day, is always good. And you may want, if you wear trail runners or lighter weight shoes, you may want to upgrade to boots with a stiffer sole because it'll be carrying more weight. As for backpacks, the size, it's really variable. It's between 45 and 65 liters, depending on gear and trip duration. So I have a 65-liter pack. It's what I've used for a lot of trips. And something like, I've done the Pemi Loop, and I think we did it in 2.5 days and 2 nights. And I brought a 65-liter and I still had a bunch of space at the top. And that's like a 30, it's between 33 and 36 miles, I think, for the total thing. But that was a little overkill. I'll use a 65-liter in the winter when we're hiking into Baxter State Park. But 45 to 55, I think, for a weekend would be sufficient. And you have to think weight versus features. Sometimes things that have more features, more comfort features, weigh a little bit more. And are you going to be concerned with the weight versus, being more comfortable? Having a proper fit, try it on with weight and as a loaded pack. It's going to fit differently than when it's completely empty. And a lot of places like Eastern Mountain Sports and REI will help you with that. I got fitted in EMS. They were great. So that's important. Having a rain cover is nice, especially because you don't know, you could be caught in the rain. It's happened quite a few times. So having a rain cover is good. You could also line the inside of your backpack with a trash bag or a trash compactor bag, which is a little bit sturdier. I do that a lot because I think a lot of backpacks these days have some waterproofing in them as it is. So just having that inner lining sometimes helps keep things drier. And hiking poles, not everybody uses trekking poles, but it does help distribute the weight. And I think some people who don't generally use trekking poles have used them when they started backpacking and have noticed a difference. It's been easier. They're more contact points so that to help distribute the weight basically and save your knees a little bit. So as far as shelter goes, tents are light. You have to decide, lighter weight versus durable and cost. So the lighter weight ones, the ultralight ones, don't tend to be quite as durable and they tend to cost more. So you have to think about that. I tend to think tents should be less than 4 pounds, 4.5 pounds, no more. And one of the things that you can do if you're backpacking with a friend, I've done this quite a few times, is tent share. So if you have a 2-person tent, one person carries the poles and one person carries the body. And that way, it's another way to distribute your weight. And tent rain fly, whether or not you need it, if it's going to rain, you could even use your tent rain fly as your shelter and just sort of, sleep on the ground or on a tarp. Hammocks are getting big, and you could fit hammocks in some places where you may not be able to fit tents. You could bring a tarp and just sort of cowboy camp with just a tarp over you. And one of the things that's nice to have is a sleeping pad, sort of an air mattress or closed cell foam. A lot Thermarest air mattresses are popular. Either the ones they say self-inflating, but you really, I think, have to blow most of them up. And some of them you just pump up, or the closed cell foam, like the Z pads that a lot of people carry just for like emergency on longer hikes. Those are some things to think about. And more on gear. So sleeping bag. Recommended for 3-season, 15 to 20 degrees. If you get really cold at night and it's, and it gets down there in temperature, you could get a sleeping bag liner, which adds some warmth. I actually use a sleeping bag liner quite frequently, and sometimes I just use that and not the sleeping bag because I get, sometimes when a sleeping bag's too much, but you need something. Thinking down, so down is lighter weight. It compresses well. It's more expensive. And when it gets damp, there's no insulation. And although the newer down, everything, some of them are coming out and they're becoming a little bit more water resistant. But when I use I have a down sleeping bag, and I put it in a waterproof compression sack. So that's another way around that. I just like the lighter weight, and it does compress down quite well. Another option is synthetic, and the synthetic ones are getting better and better as well. They're less expensive than down, and they insulate better when they get wet, which is, a good thing to have. And stoves. So there's the canister stove. It's easy to operate, but it doesn't work well in cold. There's the liquid fuel white gas, like the MSR universal stoves. It's inexpensive and available, but it's more difficult to operate. And we use the white gas stoves in the winter because it works better when it's cold. And then there's the stove pot system, the jet boil. And I use the jet boil 98% of the time. I bring that one because it boils water so fast. And I only put water in it. I don't actually cook anything in it. And I just pour the water into something else. But that's my favorite. And then there are alcohol and solo stoves. And the solo stove you can use, you can get sort of like dried materials from the ground and like wood chips and things like that. And it's more environmentally friendly, but it also takes longer to heat up and cook things. And there's also the option of, you can combine the solo stove with an alcohol stove or do the alcohol stove separately. And for cooking and eating, if you're gonna use a pot, 2 to 3 quart pot to boil water, or having the stove pot system like the jet boil, a spoon or a spork, and a dish to eat out of if using the pot, and an insulated mug. And I think the insulated mug, that's there if it's colder temperatures. For the dish and the mug, when I do bring those, I have Sea to Summit collapsible ones, but there are so many options, from inexpensive to slightly more expensive. And the mug I like because I like to have something hot when I'm in camp. So I always make instant coffee in the morning, and then sometimes I'll have a cup of tea at night before we settle in. This picture here is our Mahoosuc backpack that I did with Frank and Marielle last July on the hottest weekend of the year. And I don't think Frank's smiling very much, but Marielle is. This was like probably 5:30 or 6 in the morning. So that was
I think it
fun.
was already like 80 degrees at that point. It was insane.
Yeah, that they say it was part of that is the toughest mile on the AT, and I don't doubt it. But it was still a fun weekend, type 2 or 3 type of fun.
Like 2.5.
So packing your backpack, ABCD method. First off, accessibility. What do you want to access to throughout the day? That should be at the top of your pack. What we call, I guess, the brain, the top flap, is usually a good place to put things that you want to access easily. And especially like if you don't want to take your pack off and you're hiking with somebody, hey, can you get this or that or my sunglasses out of this spot? Makes it easy. If it's easy for them to access that, even better. So balance, distribute the weight evenly. So let's see, how to explain this without, um, so when you distribute the weight evenly, the heaviest thing should be sort of around your waist, lower back, um, and make sure that don't have something too heavy on your left side and not, that doesn't, you know, weigh evenly on your right. There's usually a sleeping bag compartment in the bottom of the pack, uh, which is convenient. So you can put your sleeping bag in the bottom, put your heavier things closer to your back, and the lighter things on the outside or further away from your back, because if you have heavy things on the, further away from your back, it throws off your balance, and you don't want that. And most backpacks come with compression straps, and so inside you can cinch those up, and that will sort of streamline your pack a little bit more. And on the interior, compression stuff sack. So I use a compression bag for my sleeping bag, and it's less, after I put it in the compression sack, it's less than half of the size that it was. And sometimes I will put my extra clothes, because I do bring, like, I'll bring a fleece, socks, underwear, and an extra shirt. I'll put those in a compression stuff sack and cinch that right down. Remember to remove the air from the stuff sacks and containers. So keeping everything dry in your pack, like I said before, you could line the inside of your pack with a trash bag. You could use a pack cover and waterproof stuff sacks or trash bags. My food is always in a waterproof bag. As I showed you before, if I have to bear hang or even put in a bear box, I have a slightly thicker material dry bag that I use when I'm backpacking for my food, just for an added layer of protection. And remember to put your food above your fuel, just in case, who knows what might happen if your fuel tank leaks a little bit. You don't want that going onto your food. So, and leave no trace. So there was actually a talk, I think it was last week, possibly. Tom O'Brien, who's a master leave no trace, did a great talk on one of the webinars. So plan ahead and prepare. Travel and camp on durable surfaces. And these are all good for just day hiking and things. And dispose of waste properly. Leave what you find. Minimize campfire impacts. One way to do that is not to have campfires. Respect wildlife. If you see a moose at a reasonable distance, take a picture, but don't try getting up close. It's kind of like, their home that you're sort of visiting. So respect wildlife. That also includes, sometimes people will play like loud music and radios as they're hiking along, but that's actually a form of noise pollution, and it changes the behavior patterns of animals in the area. So, just being aware of how just your very presence is changing, how these animals in the wild behave, and be considerate of other visitors, other other hikers, other people in the area, just be respectful and considerate. So those are important components to in backpacking and day hiking. So this was leftover upcoming backpacking trips. This is our link to our calendar. There are no backpacking trips at the moment because we're in the process of, I guess, working through the new normal and figuring it out. And I'm hoping that we will be able to add some trips at some point soon. So keep checking back there, and we'll post things in our meetup and our Facebook. And get out and get backpacking. And this was the last day of our Pemi Loop. And we're smiling. I'm kind of surprised that we're smiling, but I think it was because it was the last day and we're almost on our way down. That might have been Lincoln, maybe. It was somewhere on the Franconia.
Somewhere Franconia.
Bridge. So, and there. Okay.
Cool. So Denise, I've been going through and answering a few questions as you were talking, the ones that I I had felt fairly confident in the answers of. And if you want to, you could just take a look at the questions I answered and see if you have any additional opinions. There was one question about sleeping quilts. I don't really have any
Uh,
experience with sleeping quilts.
okay.
There were two questions about that. I don't know if you have any opinion or experience with those. I do not.
Actually, Alexa, I was actually just looking at sleeping quilts and they are expensive. So I'm actually, a friend of mine just bought a sleeping quilt. Um, and I don't know how much she spent on it. So I actually am still looking for an affordable quilt or sleeping bag, but I can post that. I have a handout that I can send everybody. So if I find the answer to that, an affordable quilt or sleeping bag, um, under 200, I'll I will pass along that information. Um, and
There's a question about this is being recorded, and is there a plan to
it is.
make it available? Great, good. So,
Um,
um,
yes, so it is being recorded. And I've already been asked by somebody, who wants the link. So I can send this out. Everybody who's registered uh, has their email there, so I can send out follow-up information. Um, and I do apologize if I talk too fast. This is my first ever webinar, so thank you for coming. Let's see. Good
so
starter trail backpacking. Did you answer that one?
I did not actually. That one just came up. So,
So depending on where you are, wow, they go fast. You're gonna have to write these down. Um, Depending on where you are, if you're in Maine, we do the Cutler Coast up in. Oh my gosh, I forgot the name of the. If you Google Cutler Coast, we've done that one like 3 years in a row on coastal Maine. It's about 4 hours north of Portland, but it's about an 8.5 mile round trip loop with about 7 established campsites. It's amazing. Ethan Pond Campground, we've done that one. That's really good. That's over in the White Mountains. I think it's over near Jackson. It's off the Appalachian Trail, and there's a way that you can do a loop, or just go do an in out and back. Um, there's an Osgood tent site below Madison. It's about a three and a half, fairly not too much elevation to get to the campsite, and then you can drop your gear and hike around there. Um, okay.
got any extra considerations when making backpacking with kids? I can't say I have any experience backpacking with kids, but
I don't. Well, I do. I do with camping. I would say when backpacking with kids, to start small and make it interesting, and only go as far as they're willing to go. Meaning, watch their body language when they need to take breaks. Take the breaks. I think kids should be able to carry a pack, but not as overloaded as 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 if they were full grown adults. Yeah, I mean, I know a lot of people do take kids backpacking. I think it would just make it fun.
bring food they like probably.
Yes, definitely, definitely. Motivation.
Yeah, they always say that. They always say the two things that people fear the most when going into the outdoors with a group is the main thing they fear is running out of food, and the second thing they fear is is being embarrassed in front of the group. So bring a lot of food. That's that's probably the biggest a good thing. So is a solo
Oh,
stove easy to manage for entry level fire starters? I guess I
so
would.
I actually just got the solo because I was talking to a woman on a hike who got it, who was new to it, new to fire starting, and she said that it was actually quite easy to use. So I'm looking forward to using that. I just got it at the end of the season, like late fall, but she said that it was pretty easy to. You just have to keep feeding it. Um, but if you have enough sort of like kindling, I'd recommend like getting lint from your dryer. Could start that, and you'll just have to keep feeding it with dry material. Um, but it seems like it's not too bad of a learning curve.
What do you do if a bear starts sniffing around your tent? You make a lot of noise, for starters.
Yeah.
And it's important just to remember to prevent that. Don't make sure you clean your pockets out. Make sure everything goes in the bear hang or goes in the bear box. There was a question earlier that I'd answered about the bear canisters. Someone had asked, "What do you do with the bear canister? Do you hang it? Do you?" When I've used them, always we just place them on the ground, like 100 yards away from everything. Do you have any differing opinion on that, Denise, about bear
I agree
canisters?
with that. And I would also say, because bears can roll things, maybe put it up against a rock or a tree. Bec- yeah. So, and remember where you put it. Because, like
Good.
in bear country, like when we were in the Adirondacks and we had to have bear boxes, and we had what, two or three at least between among us. And then,
Yeah.
anybody else who's in that area might have had a bear box too. So
They all look the same.
they all,
The bear
the
canister. Yeah.
approved ones.
Yeah, they all look the same. So, yeah, definitely. Regarding water purification, have you used a life straw? And if so, would you recommend one? I have not used, have I used, I don't think I've used a life straw, but they work, I'm sure.
Yes, I know people who use it, but I don't. I haven't used a life straw. I usually use the Katahdin and the and my iodine drops, just because the iodine drops are so small. But um, I have not, but I have heard good things about it.
Yeah, just the important thing to remember with water purification is just have a backup because if something doesn't work, you want to be sure you have some kind of backup to deal with it. So that's good there. If you had to get one backpack, would you recommend 65 liters?
I don't
uh,
even see where you are at.
oh,
Um,
that was the next question on you. Yeah, it's
oh,
okay. I can read them. So if you want to just answer them.
um, gosh.
owning
Well,
owning a 70-liter pack, I don't know if I'd recommend buying a 70-liter
so
pack.
I have a 65 liter and I use it in the winter. And I use it, I would think it would be okay. I mean, if you're not too concerned with weight and having extra space, and if you want to carry more stuff, I have friends well, like Frank, who are like carrying 65 and 70 liters. And for the last, at least 7 years, I've been carrying that most of the time. But, but, you know, at some point you might want to go lighter, but I think a 65 would be fine.
Oh, gear question like sleeping bags. Search the Kimmer website. Okay, as just advice on checking Campmore out as a source for
Yeah, I've gotten things on
gear.
Campmore.
Yeah, yeah,
It's
that's
really
good.
good. And uh, what is it? Sierra Trading Post and
Yeah, check out all the sources. They all have sales occasionally and stuff. Yeah. Um, Thank you for mentioning Leave No Trace. Yes, it's a
Hey,
good thing.
Tom! Tom did it. Yes. Yeah, I caught part of it, the recording. So thank you for doing that. We'll have to have you back again.
Do you have any experience with hammocks versus tents? And do you have a preference? Are they easy to use even in the rain? I have not used a hammock personally. Have you?
I haven't. I have a hammock that I haven't quite used. I have heard it's not super fun in the rain, but some you can buy like mine. Mine does not even come with a tarp. You could throw a tarp over it, but I think you might. It might not be as comfortable in the rain. But I know a lot of people who just throw it up and lay in it. But I don't use a hammock yet. I kind of like having the tent and the space. I get a little claustrophobic in smaller
Yeah.
spaces, but.
Well, that's worth mentioning. Claustrophobia in tents is that you will find that the person rating on tents is generally, particularly for backpacking tents, is generally pretty cozy. So you have a two-person tent. You probably want to go with another person you know well. So let's see. If you don't have a bear box, where do you put your day clothes at night? So I guess some kind of bear canister or something like that. I guess with me, generally with my clothes, it's about how smelly I think I got, um, and whether I want to keep them, put them, put them in a bear hang or something like that. Um, I don't know how you feel about that, Denise, but
Well, they say, take all smellables off
yeah,
and put them away. I actually don't. I pretty much stuff my stinky clothes in a stuff sack while I'm sleeping and use it for a pillow. So, but I don't wear perfume, and I don't think that the bears like human smell. I think and yeah, I don't think as far as my clothes, I that they smell too much like food or something that bears want. So I put them in a stuff sack, and I do put like all my hand sanitizer, my toothpaste, and my food in a bear hang or a bear box. Um, but I don't worry too much. If you spilt food on your clothes, I would probably have a different answer. But so yeah, that's basically.
I would agree. That's basically what I do too. Someone recommending the Pine Down blanket on drop.com. It's got down, weighs 19.2 and costs $100. So yeah, I'm not
Wow.
familiar with any of those, but it's down. So there's the caveats with down is it's great and light and compressible and all that kind of stuff. But if it gets wet, they have water treated down these days that's more water resistant, which is a little better. Um,
Frank, is your
but
sleeping bag synthetic?
the one I have both a down and a synthetic, depending on what I'm doing. If I think like it's going to rain or something and things are going to get really wet, I'd bring the synthetic. But otherwise, I'd bring the down because it's lighter and more compressible. So cool. Any recommendations for weight on tent, sleeping bag, and pad?
I um I have to think about how much my stuff weighs. So when I first started out, I think I had my backpacking tent that I shared with somebody else. It was like a two person was about 4 pounds, and that was a lot. I have a big Agnes Fly Creek UL1 right now. It costs a little bit more. I got it on sale, and that one is less than, it's probably a little over a pound. It's less than 2 pounds. I know that. And the sleeping bags, I don't remember, but I would try to aim for under 3 pounds if you don't want to spend too much money for each of those.
Hmm.
The tent, you could probably go to 4 pounds and maybe share it. I've seen people use a tent that was like 5 pounds and they didn't share it and they carried the whole thing, and kudos to them, but I try
Yeah,
to get my weight down and share things.
yeah, definitely always try to share gear if at all possible to keep it down, the weight down. Where do you keep your pack while you are sleeping? What I usually do is I make sure I've taken all the smellable stuff out of it, put it in the bear box or wherever we're putting stuff, and then I usually throw throw my rain cover on top of it, and hang it on a tree or lean it against a tree, in the vicinity of where I am. That's generally my strategy. I don't know, how about you, Denise?
Sometimes I do that, but I think most often I just put it in now I'm forgetting what it's called, the opening of the flat
Vestibule?
the yes. So I put it in the vestibule if I have a decent one, not when I have my one person tent because
Yeah.
there's no room. But if I have a decent vestibule, I just put it under there. I also put my boots under there, just because you never know when you have to get up in the middle of the night really fast.
Yeah, my bag's too big to fit under any of the vestibules of any of the tents I have, so that's why I go the rain cover route because you never know when you'll get some dew or something overnight sometimes.
Mm.
So
Oh, I always put my rain cover down
yeah,
too. So
yeah, just to keep it dry. I think that's all the questions. There's some stuff in the chat here. Didn't see what is in the chat. I thought there was something in the chat. Where'd it go? Oh, there it is.
oh, it's
Weight of tents. Use of softy tube protects sleeping bag. Well, uses which can be wet and still warm. Interesting. I'm not familiar with that, but
well, now I'm learning some more things about
yeah,
different
yeah,
things to.
cool. I think that's all the questions. So if anyone
Great.
has any more, wait, some more. No, these are just two we answered. Okay.
So so if people want to periodically check her, calendar. I'm hoping that at some point we will start populating again. I think it's we're not we are not allowed to have events before June 4th, and we'll see after that. Just waiting to hear the word. But I can send out. I have sort of like a little extra information. I know this is a lot of information to absorb, and thank you so much for your patience and coming. Um, Hopefully, it wasn't too confusing. I was a little thrown off. My screen changed, and I wasn't able to find things. So thank you all for coming. You, my email is you can email me at outings@amcmaine.org. Um, so thank you for coming, everyone. Be safe, and I hope that we will see you on a trip soon. And feel free to email if you have any questions. And thank you, Frank, for helping me.
Oh, thank you, Denise. You did most of the work here. I just, alrighty.
All right. Good
Cool.
night.
Bye, everybody.